Kanye West wants out of a deal with the Gap. His lawyers say the clothing chain didn't hold up its end of the bargain. A letter viewed by Reuters said the chain failed to sell Yeezy Gap branded products at brick and mortar stores and failed to open dedicated shops. West, known as Ye, signed a 10-year deal with Gap in 2020 to create the line of clothing. Yeezy Gap's first product, a blue puffer jacket, sold out within hours last year. But ties between the rapper and company have been increasingly strained, with West threatening to walk away from the brand on social media. The Gap has been struggling, pointing to inflation and outdated styles at Old Navy. The company's top boss abruptly left in July. West wants to open his own Yeezy stores to, quote, make up for lost time, according to his lawyer. The Gap did not respond to a Reuters request for comment.
Carrying whatever small luggage they had, a group of migrants from South America arrived on the wealthy Massachusetts island of Martha's Vineyard Wednesday. 2 chartered planes carried them to the politically liberal enclave, part of a campaign by Republican governors to shift the immigration burden to Democratic areas. With a population of just 20,000, some Martha's Vineyard residents Thursday decried the move as a political stunt, as local officials and volunteers scrambled to help the confused new arrivals, like Uvaldo Arcaya, who said he fled political persecution in Venezuela and hopes to find work in the U.S.
I have a lot of faith and patience in the people here, and they're helping us. Faith and patience in the people here.
Though a Massachusetts state representative said the passengers had arrived from Texas, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis took credit for sending this group.
All those people in D.C. and New York were beating their chests when Trump was president, saying they were so proud to be sanctuary jurisdictions, saying how bad it was to have a secure border. The minute even a small fraction of what those border towns deal with every day is brought to their front door, they all of a sudden go berserk.
On Thursday morning, another group of migrants bussed in from Texas arrived in Washington, D.C., and were left stranded next to the U.S. Naval Observatory, home to Vice President Kamala Harris. David Morales told Reuters he came from Venezuela before embarking on the 40-hour-long bus ride.
A very long trip, quite tough. We didn't expect to be left adrift here, not knowing where to head to. Our objective is to reach New York.
Carla Bustillos, a volunteer working with NGOs that care for migrants, said she waited for the buses to arrive at Union Station, only to find they had dropped the migrants off outside the vice president's home.
So while we're doing this political show, we have human beings feeling that their suffering is being exploited. They have come to the United States to seek asylum, and they have been told to get on these buses and promised that an organization would receive them here, give them food, shelter, and a job.
The high-profile moves of dropping migrants far from the border come as Republican Governor DeSantis and Texas Governor Greg Abbott both seek re-election in November. They say they are trying to push responsibility for a record number of border arrivals to Democratic strongholds, including Washington, D.C., New York City, and Chicago. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said Thursday that Republicans are using the migrants as political pawns.
The fact that Fox News and not the Department of Homeland Security, the city, or local NGOs were alerted about a plan to leave migrants, including children, on the side of a busy D.C. street makes clear that this is just a cruel, premeditated political stunt.
A Freedom of Information Act request showed Texas has bused more than 7,000 migrants to Washington, D.C. and New York City since April, spending nearly $13 million on the initiative through August 8th.
There's a process in place. We have had a process in place. There's a legal way of doing this. And for managing migrants, Republican governors interfering in that process and using migrants as political pawns is shameful, is reckless, and just plain wrong. The fact that Fox News and not the Department of Homeland Security, the city, or local NGOs were alerted about a plan to leave migrants, including children, on the side of a busy D.C. street makes clear that this is just a cruel, premeditated political stunt. This is what they are doing. And a couple more things. The migrants, including children, who arrived in Martha's Vineyard were misled about where they were being taken and what would be provided when they arrived is also deeply alarming.
Wall Street ended sharply lower on Thursday, extending its losses in late afternoon trading as a raft of economic data failed to alter the expected course of aggressive tightening by the Federal Reserve amid growing warnings of a global recession. The Dow fell about 0.5%, the S&P lost more than 1%, and the Nasdaq dropped nearly 1.5%. A mixed bag of economic data led by better-than-expected retail sales cemented the likelihood of another 75 basis point interest rate hike from the Fed at the conclusion of next week's monetary policy meeting. But David Berman, portfolio manager of Durbin Capital, said the Fed needs to be even more aggressive and shock the economy in order to tame inflation, which he calls a very serious issue.
Well, I think that the one thing I will say is that I've been a little disappointed in the Fed and how they've transmitted to the marketplace slowly what their intentions are. In other words, the intentions of the Fed are, by the time they make the announcement, are well known. There's no sort of shock factor. I would like to see the Fed sort of raising rates and doing something that's a little bit of a shock factor to say, we mean business.
Interest rate-sensitive banks helped soften the Dow's decline, but the sell-off, which gathered momentum toward the end of the session, saw market leaders including Microsoft, Apple, and Amazon hitting the tech-laden Nasdaq. Shares of railroad operators Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern outperformed the broader market after the Biden administration helped broker a tentative deal with unions to avert a strike. And Adobe tumbled after the company said it would buy software firm Figma in a deal valued at about $20 billion.
Jill and I, my wife Jill and I, and she's teaching, that's why she's not here, traveled to Buffalo to grieve with families and deliver a message from deep in our nation's soul. In America, evil will not win. It will not prevail. And white supremacists will not have the last word, and this venom and violence cannot be the story of our time. Look, folks, there are core values that should bring us together as Americans. And one of them is standing together against hate, racism, bigotry, violence that have long haunted and plagued our nation. Another core value is standing united. For the enduring source of our strength is the idea of America. We're the most unique nation in the world. Every other nation is based on ethnicity, geography. In America, we're based on an idea. Literally, not figuratively, an idea. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All women and men are created equal, endowed by their Creator, etc. We've never lived up to that, but we never before walked away from it. We never walked away from it.